we are going to bring in a man who absolutely needs no introduction.
But we're going to give him one anyway.
Why not? He's the director of Clerks, the director of Dogma, the director of Tusk, and also he's going to be the showrunner of Masters of the Universe Revelation. He is a person I like to call the Podfather. Mr. Kevin Smith is joining the show.
And he comes with props.
Open. How are you, kids? Lovely intro. Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Work. This is an amazing thing, man. Getting comic books into the hands of folks overseas. That's you can't think of anything more noble than that. But did I just hear that you received a bunch when you were over?
That's right. I was deployed in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2005, and about halfway through my deployment, I at that time I was out of comic books, and I got a package. I opened it up, and it had an issue of Adventures of Superman and Ultimate X-Men. And the Ultimate X-Men was the Mark Miller run where suddenly Nightcrawler had a soul patch and he was a murderer. And I remember reading this and being like, what the hell is going on in X-Men? It took me back in.
And honestly, X-Men right now could do that for a lot of people because post House of X, Powers of X is very good.
Yeah, so I literally
and also the soul patch is back. So
that's true. That's true. But when I honestly say like a care package literally saved my life, I truthfully believe, like 100%, there is no lie there. So that's why this is like one of the.
I remember being like at film school and like was getting a letter from a friend and being like, oh. I would imagine if you're overseas, you're deployed, and you get a package of normalcy, a little piece of something from home. It's got to feel like water in the desert. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it makes a really big deal because one of the things that people don't realize, especially when like you're deployed, is that especially service members, you get into like video games, you get into movies, and it's because you think that your life is on pause and you think you're being forgotten by everybody that's in America and kind of gets to enjoy their life. So
didn't you guys pass around Smallville DVDs?
We did. Smallville was like only in like the 5th season, and I remember like people that I would have never told you was a nerd were like, hey, you got that Smallville? It was like we were passing crack. You got that Smallville DVD?
Once you start seeing like heroes start popping up, you're like, oh yeah, I'll take some more of that.
So Kevin, thank you so much again for joining us. I want to shout out a connection that we have. So we got connected and we got you into this drive because of a good friend of ours, Dia Mishra, who worked with you on the Masters of Universe show. And so my first question for you is, I work in a writer's room for CBS. What is working in a writer's room with Kevin Smith like?
Yeah. I've worked before. This was my first. And it was fun. I had no idea that all you do is sit around and go like, ooh, what if we did this? Ooh, what if we did this?
Yeah.
Ooh, then we could do this. And oh, wouldn't it be cool if we do this? That's it. You just make your blue sky and you're making pretend your stream of consciousness, just throwing out cool ideas. And we started with a narrative, like I had written an outline, but then when we sat down and did like our writer's room, it was like, all right, like let's put some meat on this. And I'd never done that before. I'm used to kind of working by myself. And it was glorious, man. Dia wrote 2 wonderful scripts, really, really wonderful scripts. She wrote 2, episode 2, and then what was the other one? It's either episode, I think it's 7 she did, if not 8. It's either 7 or 8. But she crushed it, absolutely crushed it. And right before we started talking, I was just listening to a piece of the score. The composer, who we haven't revealed yet, just sent me like a piece for the opening and a very important cue in our series that gets repeated if you follow me and stuff. And they are like phenomenal. Are we allowed to curse on this or no?
Yeah, go for it.
Fucking phenomenal. God, it's it's tough when you start with a property like Masters of the Universe where people have in their head what that sounds like from growing up and stuff. So to step in and present a piece of music that's going to be like, well, this is what the show sounds like now. It takes a bit of hubris, if you will, to be like, I can beat that. I can beat your childhood memories and your passions. But our composer did just that, like a phenomenal job. cannot wait for people to see the show, but now I can't wait for them to hear it too. I've been watching animatics and full animation. Now we've gotten a bunch of the episodes back fully animated, but with temp score. So they never give it to you dry. So they put in lots of temp score, and it's borrowed from all different movies and TV shows. And they do a great job like finding temp score pieces that feel germane to the animation. But now we're in the next phase where the actual composer is literally composing fresh, brand new, never heard before cues based on what they're seeing for the first time.
Yeah, so music really makes your piece sometimes. Like, especially like a movie that you could be like very mediocre on. If it has like a great, like say Giacchino or even Bear McCreary score, it'll just elevate it so much.
Yeah.
It's we talked to Susan Eisenberg earlier today, and she said that you were one of the most uplifting, encouraging, like wonderful directors that she has ever worked with on a project.
She said that you directed her a lot from her closet.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a few times she had to do it at home. In the beginning of the process, we were all like, we could be in a studio recording, and then when COVID kicked in, a lot of online Zoom sessions. But I'm here to tell you, her performance is so beautiful and so moving, and one of my favorite things I've ever committed to anything, to film, TV, whatever. She is the beautiful soul at the center of a very human adventure involving very inhuman characters. That's
a great way to describe that show.
Yeah,
it truly is. Think about the what they call IP, the intellectual property of Masters of the Universe. If you look at them, you're like, well, that's a stretch. It's big. It's out there. It came from Tolkien's choice. So to ground that with humanity, which is something they always did in the cartoons, in the classic cartoons as well. That's all they did. They didn't let them cross swords. It was all morality tales and stuff like that. But Susan's performance as the sorceress is a thing of wonder. Like, naturally, of course, there's hints of Diana and Wonder Woman in there, but it's even deeper than that. It comes across like a reassuring mother, girlfriend, teacher, nun, like just the maternal or the female voice that you could spend the rest of your life nestled inside of.
I'm easily comforted.
I'm so not overselling it. Her performance in this show is so beautiful. But to be fair, like, everyone is giving it like they're all. Our marching orders from Teddy, our exec at Netflix, was
we know Teddy. We were actually at Teddy's house the day you texted him the full cast.
As you can see, Teddy and I are both big fans of action figures, so we're constantly sharing pictures.
To be fair, he's got you beat. Like, package. He is a monument to not just buying the thing, but taking it out of the package and putting it up. And I couldn't believe, like, no earthquakes have knocked his shit down.
Oh, no.
Oh, they've got to be puttied for the gods.
A little bit, but some of them not. I asked him, I was like, "Did you nail them in?" He goes, "No, just well played." But he gave us, like, his passion is Motu. He said, like, I love Star Wars growing up. I love Batman, but Motu was my number one and stuff. And
when you have an executive like that, that really makes a difference, because anybody, as you would know, you've probably worked with so many executives that are just like, oh yeah, okay, view askew, whatever.
People were like, even when you're doing things like I've worked on Supergirl and Flash.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're dealing with people who are making the calls who are not familiar with the source material or anything. So you can be like, "Ooh, can we add this?" And like, why would you add that? So having an exec who, like, both Rob over at Mattel and Teddy at Netflix, two like paragons between which our entire writers world stood, and we were protected. We could never trip or fall because these two cats love the franchise. Like Teddy said, look, when I used to watch this as a kid, I believed it. I thought every episode Skeletor was going to kill He-Man. He's going, just make me believe that again. He's going, just give it stakes.
What a simple directive. That's
but also
pure.
What a tall order at the same time.
It is when you, especially when you're like, really, Triclops, make that real? But like,
Man at Arms, what's wrong with you?
His last marching order was pitch perfect, but probably the best direction I received in my life. He said, I know some people think it's goofy IP. All I'm asking is that you treat it like Shakespeare. And we did. Like we went in. It's not like people speak in iambic pentameter, but like everything has stakes. Everything is a human drama. Everything is about family. It's the folks at Powerhouse Animation who do Castlevania. They also just did Blood of Zeus, and they do Seismanos. Like this project, them on Masters, they've transcended everything they've done as far as I'm concerned. But also they've had to deal with so much dialogue. Like Castlevania, there's long stretches with no dialogue. It's just good to look at and moody. But this is like people do not stop talking. And the voices you're hearing are like Susan, or you're hearing Lena Headey, or you're hearing Mark Hamill, or Chris Wood, or Sarah Michelle Gellar, or Rollins, Henry Rollins doing like Triclops. And our version of Triclops, like when you see it, you'll be like, that's why they went for Henry Rollins. He came in, he was like, I want to try for Skeletor, but we had Mark already as Skeletor. Yeah. So I was like, dude, what we're doing with Triclops is perfect for who you are. So he was like, all right. And I'm not saying like he's a musician. It ain't that. It's just that Henry's speaking voice, and when Henry gets passionate, fit perfectly with what we do with Triclops in our show.
We have a great question here, because when I think about Motu, I also think about the toys. In fact, when I was a kid, I had the half He-Man, half Skeletor sword. Like this side of Skeletor, this side was He-Man. You pull them apart. And Adam Slekta here says, Kevin, I had an awesome toy He-Man sword when I was a kid. I hope it's the same one. Are there any cool toys coming out that you can talk about? Because I assume that does factor, but you may not.
Teddy as the exec, I would imagine.
You may not be able to talk about him, but I assume you would have to in your stories keep that in mind.
Oddly enough, they were never like, even with Mattel as our studio, they were never like, hey man, don't forget, we're in this for the toys. Like first and foremost, it was all about telling a moving story. That being said, we knew or hoped that there would be toys based on our incarnation. There will always be He-Man toys based on the classic line and stuff like that. But like, it wasn't necessarily guaranteed we would get figures, or if we did, it might be direct market only or something like that. Like in the beginning, and I'm talking about, this goes back over a year since I've been involved with this. So like not the last PowerCon, but the PowerCon before that. So back in the beginning, there was like, talk about like, one day maybe there'll be toys, but there was no guarantee. Just the other day, I saw the protos based on our cartoon. And when I say our, I mean, it's Powerhouse Animation.
Yeah.
So the figures, like, they're the classic He-Man figures, which they've just re-released that look like we know from childhood. But there's this whole new line that Mattel is releasing that's based on what we do in the show. So it's all the redesigns and whatnot. And to be fair, the redesigns are insanely close to the original. It's not like we're changed at all, but it's just in this new Powerhouse style. So I've seen 10 different figures and some conveyances. I'm trying to be obscure. But
trying to keep the lawyers happy. It's a toy you can hold in your hand. That's as much as I can say.
I've seen I guess this goes without saying. Of course, there would be a Battle Cat. I've seen the redesign of Battle Cat, and it's not redesign where it's like, fuck your granddad's Battle Cat. He just, of course, has way more articulation, but most importantly, his face looks like our Battle Cat. And when our Battle Cat, we put the helmet on him, he'll look like Battle Cat. But when he's Cringer, I should say, his face resembles our Cringer. Stephen Root plays our Cringer, and he plays.
Oh, that's great.
He's so beautiful. He's heartbreakingly wonderful. There's a bit of, Cowardly Lion to the performance, a little bit of Bert Lahr, but it's very uniquely Stephen. It's almost as if Cringer is being played by Milton in Office Space. He's just very trepidatious about everything he says, as Cringer would be. But the design I've seen of the Battle Cat looks like our Battle Cat, and or the design of Cringer looks like our Cringer, and that moved me incredibly. And again, it's not like this is my drawing of Cringer, but this is like some of the characters are specific to what the story we're telling. So when I see those figures, I'm like, oh, that's definitely from our world. And the rest of them, of course, are redesigns of every character we've known and loved over the years. So yeah, long story short, there's definitely going to be toys. And it's not just direct market. Like there's going to be a big push, which I'm delighted by, because the series that we've come up with, like I've watched it over and over again. I have to, it's part of the job. But beyond the ones that I watched, like having to give notes, I'll wake up in the morning, and if I got nothing to do and I'm like, oh, I'm awake and bake, that's what I watch is Motu. Even
has it replaced Frasier in your rotation?
Yeah, well,
we went to the last Talk Salad and scrambled eggs. So
you were there.
We were there. Yeah, it's the one podcast. It's like, because we're like big Frasier heads. It was the one podcast that we're like, man, I wish that one would come back.
Matt had a kid, and then he got a much better.
I know.
But yes, Frasier was our nighttime go to sleep show. This has become my morning
wake up show. Nice.
I wake up and I obsessively watch Masters of the Universe, and it's not like I'm not taking all the credit by any stretch of the imagination. It's a big fucking team, and our writers, of course, Dia is one of them. Mark, Tim, and Eric.
Yeah, Tim Sheridan, who just wrote an excellent Superman. I believe it's called The Man of Tomorrow.
Yes.
That animated.
Yeah.
That movie was so good.
Tim is wonderful. Tim wrote like 2 or 3. 1, 2, 3 of the best scripts in our run. Like he's such a natural at it, and he brought some real humanity to. Again, like I lean into the humanity of it all, because these characters are a bit out there and larger than life, and could be easily dismissed as toys. That's what they were. They were created as toys. But man, oh man, when you get enough writers in a room, and these weren't even writers that like, I grew up with this shit, this was my religion. Like that was Teddy for sure. Yeah. Teddy thought this was his religion. But the rest of us were like, look, let's just try to tell a great story. Let's do what we've watched Marvel do for 10 years. Take IP that we grew up with and know very well, and turn it into something that everyone could enjoy and watch. So we wound up making this like family affair. And when I say family, I mean like you can literally, like if you're my age, you could watch it with your kids and be like, this is the shit I grew up on. And if you're not even watching it with a parent, you would dig it anyway. Like it's entry level while still continuing the story that had existed. Like, because it's not like we don't reinvent. It's almost as if this was the next episode to the classic run. So I'm still to this day a bewildered, baffled, but so thankful how this turned into something so good. Like, and I don't say this with any hype or any pretense of like salesmanship. I never expected this to happen, but it is, of everything I've done over 26 years, like it's the thing that when I die, I hope they run an Oscar clip from. Like I can't believe how much
like a clip of Battle Cat comes through. Kevin Smith.
Like, I would have chosen Clerks, but Battle Cat. It is so well done. It's one of the things I'm most proud that I've ever been involved with creatively. And like, I wouldn't have guessed that at the beginning when I took the job. I was like, yeah, this will be fun. Like, let's make a He-Man show. But now it's turned into like something else. And I'll be honest with you, and I don't want to oversell it, but I love it so much. It's going to be really difficult for me to think about doing a season 2 because like I shot my wad with this. I know there are other very talented writers, including Dia, who'd be like, look, I got a season 2. Fuck Kevin. I'm ready. But like for me, when I watch it, I'm like, it'll never be as beautiful as this. Like this coalesced so unbelievably well. It's not even like, oh, there were, bumps in season 1. It came together so magically. Everybody had this sacred trust, knowing that like we're holding this very important, very gossamer piece of a lot of people's childhood, and we're not going to fuck it up. We're going to deliver this Fabergé egg. And so it turned into something special. And the score piece that I just heard before we began literally like rolled tears. Like I was like, I can't believe we're getting this as well. Like so far, it's been an embarrassment of riches. And it's my only negative to this whole Masters of the Universe experience is I live like a year in front of everybody else. So I'm seeing shit that I can't share, that I can't be like, oh, let me tell you what happens. Like I got to just if I could keep my mouth shut, like for another 8 months, 10 months, who knows?
Yeah.
I'll make it to the finish line and maybe I'll get another job one day. But it's so tough. Like in my world, I'm used to being like, this is what Jay and Silent Bob do. And I'll spoil shit and I don't care because it's my shit. But in this world, I'm working for somebody else. And they're like, you can't spoil that. Like, that's why I'm like, I can't even tell you who the composer is yet.
Yeah.
Like, not yet. We don't want to say yet.
I can't wait, though, to hear the music and then tweet at you and be like, Kevin, was it this piece? Kevin, was it this piece?
It is. You'll know exactly because the pieces that were sent it's the opening. We have an opening sequence. I wouldn't say credit sequence because there's no credits on it, but there's an opening sequence that kind of tells the story of Motu and Eternia for anybody sitting down to watch it. So that has this amazing. Liam Cunningham plays our man-at-arms. He is the one that kind of gives voice as the narrator to this opening sequence. So it's his very commanding voice and this score that plays under it. And the score is so fucking dope. It's filled with wonder and metal at the same time.
Ooh, I love
that. Which is great.
So when you see the episode, it's the very first piece of music that you'll ever hear. And then the second piece that I heard today was the transformation sequence. So like whenever He-Man changes, this is the music.
He-Man changes?
I don't want to get fired by Netflix.
Whoa.
You're giving away too much. But
40-year-old
he didn't say it. He didn't say it.
No, I said it.
He-Man is not Prince Adam. All right.
Yes. Do you know where that came from? Speaking of comics,
no.
This is all shit that you pick up.
Wait, if I remember right, I think isn't it right that it all comes from the toy line, right? Is it?
Yes and no, and it's a very hodgepodge mythology that's been put together by a lot of different people. Number one, of course, it was just toys. They were like, we're gonna sell toys, and here's a guy, and he's very muscular, and the cat, Battle Cat, was actually a cat that came from a Big Jim doll set, which was another toy Mattel did. And so they were like, just paint him green and we'll put him in the box as well, because they had a bunch of them left over. So it wasn't even pre-thought out. And also they were like, the Big Jim doll is much larger than the He-Man figure. So the tiger was proper size to the Big Jim doll. The He-Man figures are smaller, so instead He-Man gets to ride Battle Cat because it was just that big. And that's all an accident. That's not somebody going like, all right, I'm sitting in front of a typewriter. I got to come up with a new mythology. There's a guy with muscles who rides a giant green tiger.
At any moment, I'm waiting for this to take a left turn because you're saying Battle Cat and Big Jim. And I'm like, where are we going?
Mattel has a bit of them. They create a lot of the mythology, all the characters, most of the characters, all the artwork that's very like Boris Vallejo looking and stuff like that. But and they included comic books in the figures that told the backstories and like talked about how He-Man and Skeletor are locked in eternal battle. But so much of the mythology of Motu and He-Man was not established by them. It was established by DC Comics. When DC Comics got the license to publish Masters of the Universe He-Man comics, they're the ones who came up with there is a Prince Adam secret identity. Which makes sense because they're
very
the whole
Clark Kent, yeah.
secret identities, very Clark Kent. So they were like looking at what they had to work with, and they're like, "There's no connectivity here. This guy's just muscly and he's huge and he's got a sword. A kid's got to need a way into this. So we're going to give him a separate identity where he's the Prince of Eternia, but nobody knows that like when he raises the sword, he becomes." So all of this just gets added later on. Like, and then gets worked into, and that's added by comic books. Then that gets worked into the cartoon as well. And the cartoon, they add their own piece of the mythology in as much as nobody had Orko before. The cartoon was like, hey, we got an idea. Let's have this little.
It's like this Superman radio show with Jimmy Olsen.
Yep.
Very much like Perry White, Jimmy Olsen didn't exist until the radio show. So it's got a mythology like all good comic books. It was not one person. Everyone always thinks about Batman, Bob Kane, but we all know that it was like Bob Kane, Bill Finger, Dick Sprang. Everything you love about Batman was not one guy. Same thing here with Masters of the Universe. Unfortunately, their names are lost to time, but like there were a bunch of people sitting in a toy company came up with a lot of this mythology. Then people at DC Comics came up with a lot more. Then Filmation came up with a lot more. And, they did another round of the show in the early 2000s, the Mike Young version, I think it was.
Yeah, it was like very anime inspired. I remember that show.
Very, very, and very, very true to the source material too, because there have been different iterations where they send them into the future and stuff. But ours now, we get to add a little piece to the mythology as well. And our series is predicated on an old piece of mythology anyway. So it all like ties in. But it's so fascinating to know, like, as you get deeper and deeper with this character, that like so many people have added a spoke to the wheel. So many people go before you touch somebody else's IP, you know, like and as I sat there watching Mandalorian the other morning, I was like, man, like Jon Favreau is taking like this IP and making it good for me again. Like it's Star Wars perfected. And that's what I really hope that we've done with Masters of the Universe is like, I think we're giving it to folks the way I feel when I watch Mandalorian is the way I feel when I watch our Masters of the Universe. But I didn't grow up on Masters. I watched it all, but I didn't collect toys and stuff. So I'm hoping if it can move me, that I'm hoping like a hardcore fan, like, and we know our test pilot is Teddy. So Teddy is like, he gets to see everything. He gets to read he gets to hear notes. Teddy was at our writer's room, like,
nice.
and like kneeling on the ground on the table, like throwing in suggestions and stuff, like a kid watching an imaginary TV show that wasn't being projected. So having Teddy there just meant that like we always had like, you know, somebody to like, here, you try it. How's it taste? Because that is the taste maker. This is the person who's like forgotten more about Masters of the Universe than those of us who made it. No. So if he's happy, and so far he's been ecstatic, I really feel like even a casual Motu fan is like, oh, I kind of like that, is really gonna like what we've done.
I think you guys are in the right headspace, and I think Masters of the Universe is in the right place and time to like really hit big. Now, I want to ask you about some of your own IP, because I'd be remiss if I didn't give you mass kudos for a show that I think was so ahead of its time, Clerks, the animated series. I love that show. Still have the DVDs. I don't know if we
can call that IP because half of IP is intellectual. And
that's right.
Any of the particular Clerks cartoon. That Clerks cartoon, I wish I could take all the credit for, but it was me, Scott Mosier, and most importantly, the secret ingredient, the master ingredient, was a guy named Dave Mandel. You see him in the cartoon. He's like, "Thanks for watching." He's sitting there holding drinks. He came from SNL, and then right before us, he'd worked at Seinfeld for like the last 5 seasons. So when Seinfeld was wrapped up and they were done, all those writers got fucking seized upon by other studios, TVs, you know, and locked up in deals. Dave got locked up in a Touchstone TV deal. And so he was like, he asked them, he was like, I like Clerks. Like, can I meet Kevin Smith? And so we met about talking about doing this cartoon. And Dave's the mad genius. Anything you loved about the Clerks cartoon probably came from Dave. If the Clerks cartoon had been up to me, it would have been in black and white and resembled Clerks.
Yes.
It would have been cool in black and white.
Hey, I remember those in action figures. I remember them.
I have limited imagination, but Dave was like, it's a cartoon, so we could do anything. So like, you know, he's going, it's great that we've got a situation, and as much as this guy works at the convenience store, this guy works at the video store, he's going, but like, let's take advantage of the fact that we can, like, why make it, he's going, Clerks is what it is because you really couldn't do it any other way. But he's going, in cartoons, we could put, you know, fucking gargoyles in it and shit. So
or an entire anime sequence with the bears driving.
and that's Dave too. Like that came directly out of Dave's head. Like Dave had a series of jokes from growing up that he always wanted to tell. His favorite, I think, was the Transformer moment, like when the robot
where it kills the people
and blood comes out.
Yep.
That, like Dave loved that joke. Dave's a master joke. The one he pitched to me when he was like, what I would like to do is have the guys talk about pop culture the way you do in the movies, but then we could show stuff. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, so they can, you know, there's a video store. They can watch movies. I want to do this joke where they're watching Schindler's List, but it's not Schindler's List. He goes, remember how, you know, the same year that Schindler's List came out, Steven Spielberg also produced the Flintstones movie? And I was like, yes, I do remember. Well, I want to do a bit where they're watching Flintstones List. And then we cut to like the scene and we see cavemen being loaded onto a train car, and then the door closes and then their feet come out and the train car walks away. I said, Dave, I can't tell that joke. And Dave goes, I'm Jewish, so I can. And so that ended up in the Clerks cartoon. And like that was the joke he told me that we pitched whenever we went someplace to pitch it. We were like, this will decide whether or not you feel like it has a home here. And so we would pitch incredibly well everywhere. But by the time we got to that joke, you could just see people go like, we're
out.
Never. So Mandel is the genius behind that. He went on to do the last, I think, 3-4 seasons of
Veep.
Yeah, he was in charge. He's an absolute master and so brilliant. He came from the Harvard Lampoon. He's a Harvard kid. He's so damn good. So he deserves the lion's share of the credit. I deserve credit for Dante, Randall, Jane, Silent Bob, and here's Quick Stop, and here's RST Video.
Well, speaking of that, then
fancy as Dave.
I will ask you about. We'll transition this into because I want to ask you about Clerks 3. Now, I love Clerks 2. Clerks 2 is I'm one of the weirdos that like Clerks 2 more than Clerks 1 because
I'm in that club.
All right. It's a very I hope there's more than that. It's just the two of us. I'm pretty certain about that.
It's just you guys drinking beer.
Just the two of you. Hey, remember Clerks 2, Kevin?
We know right, and everyone else.
Yeah. But I love it because I saw it right after I got out of college, and the scene where Randall's like, working in a gas station or working in a store with my best friend is the happiest day of, it's the best job I could ever have. And that meant so much to me. And I remember when you started the Smodcast radio, you started mentioning Clerks 3. I've written Clerks 3.
As long as I've known Jason, he's told this story.
Yes. And you always said this statement on one of those episodes where you're like, I let my wife, your lovely wife, Jennifer, read the first 20 pages or so, and it made her cry. And ever since then, I've always been like, what is that opening? What is the opening of this movie?
We did it once let me see, it was over a year ago, I guess. Yeah, a year and maybe a half ago, as a benefit for the First Avenue Playhouse in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, which is where I held auditions for Clerks. And it's like a dessert theater. We used to go see shows there and stuff. So they needed a new roof, so we did a benefit where I was like, all right, we'll read my Clerks 3 script, the one we're not going to make. Now there's a different Clerks 3 script. So we read it, and it was twice. We did 2 performances, sold out. It was very small. It was only 80 people in the room and shit each time.
Sold out is sold out, though.
Yeah, that's right. Right, that cred.
But it was there by the end. This ain't bragging. It's just fact. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Now, most people are like, dude, why do you want people to cry in a sequel to a comedy? You do remember Clerks. But the Clerks movies, there's a progression. All the stuff I've done is that a progression where, in the beginning, I was a young kid and I was like, let's just make funny shit. The older one gets, as one could see with Clerks 2, the more one starts thinking and feeling and not being afraid, more importantly, to wear their heart on their sleeve. When I make Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, well, not so much Chasing Amy. Clerks and Mallrats, that's a guy who's not going to show you his heart because, why would he? I'm trying to make you laugh, and I'll try to be smart, but I'm not going to try to make you feel. And then I read a review of Clerks and Mallrats where the guy was talking about he was reviewing Mallrats because it just came out, but he also took a chance to re-review Clerks because he hadn't done that. And the review for Mallrats wasn't all that good, but what he said in the review changed my life. He said the filmmaker should just lean into his heart because clearly he cares. It seems like he's trying to put on airs like he's too cool for this. But he's got a big gooey heart, and he should lean into that. We should wear his heart on his sleeve. And then the very next movie I wrote was Chasing Amy, where I did that, and it kind of cracked my universe open and stuff. So the work has gotten progressively more emotional. And so Clerks 3, Clerks 2, of course, was very emotional, but Clerks 3 is the midlife to death movie where, now I got lots to say because the end is nearer than the beginning at this point and stuff like that. So that version of Clerks 3, we won't do because it was beautiful, but it's fucking depressing. So, it was written by a guy who was obsessed with death before he almost died.
Yeah.
So I wrote that before I had a heart attack. Then I had a heart attack. I was like, I don't want to write about death. I think I could do this in a different way. So the new story of Clerks 3 is very familiar. Randall has a massive heart attack in the opening 5 minutes and almost dies. And as he's recovering in the hospital and Dante's there with him, he's like, I almost died tonight. He's going, that's it. And then what would have been to show for my whole life? I never got married like you. I ain't got no kids. Like, this is it. Like, I owned a convenience store and a crappy video store. And then if I died, nobody would remember me. Who would tell my story? He's going, I sat around my whole life watching other people's movies. What a waste of time. He's going, well, no more. If I get out of this hospital, I'm going to make a movie and you're going to help me and we're going to do it at the store. And so Dante and Randall essentially make Clerks and we come full circle. So the idea is they gave me my entire life when I made Clerks, Dante and Randall. I'm going to give them theirs. I'm going to give them the same shot they gave me to get out of that store and kind of take hold of their lives. So it's,
wow, I really like that.
Bless the casting director who's going to have to cast younger versions of characters who represent you and your buddies.
It'll be so fun because we get to make a movie within a movie, and
Yeah.
it's incredibly meta and stuff. So yes, we get to pick people who play young versions of us. And since Clerk's been around for like a quarter of a century and has found some fans, we might be able to get some cool ass fucking people to play the alternate versions of us. You know what I'm saying? Like in a world where we got Hemsworth for reboot, sky's the limit.
Chris Evans as Randall.
Mahershala Ali as Dante.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Yeah, we have to.
Oh, wow. That sounds quite amazing. Wow. So, we're speaking about movies. We're in a weird year of 2020. You're a professional filmmaker, director here. Where do you think? Look,
Don't do that.
Look, earlier in this podcast, I was awarding professional to other people. You are professional, so definitely 100% professional.
Thank you very much.
The bar is all you have to get is somebody else has to say it. That's it. You got it.
As long as somebody paid you to do a thing, you're a pro.
That's
Exactly.
right. That's right. Where do you think feature films are going to go in the future with 2021 and 2022 and VOD and all this stuff like that? And especially for you, is there any part of that concerns you as a filmmaker?
Well, you're crushing it on VOD right
Yeah.
now. So.
You go right on your phone. I mean, for a while, like it seems like Wonder Woman was the last holdout, and they were like maybe December. But now there's an article, on Friday that talked about they're having discussions inside Warner Brothers about whether to wait until the summer. And now that we hear there's a vaccine in the offing, that could be great. Take a movie like that to the theaters, you make over $1 billion worldwide. Or they're doing what Disney has done and others have done and having this discussion about maybe we do debut it on HBO Max, which would drive, subscriptions, which is something they're very interested in now. Because, the shutdown has taught everybody how fragile this ecosystem is. And the one place that sustained the hit was streaming. Like you don't have to go out to the movie theater to watch a movie. You can literally stream it. So it'll be interesting to see if Warner Brothers does make the decision to put Wonder Woman on HBO Max, because that will show you what the future is, and the future is streaming, period.
Yeah.
We sadly in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, which is the town next to the town I grew up in, the Atlantic Highlands Twin Cinema, it used to be the Atlantic Highlands Cinema, has been there 99 years. It went from a single screen to 2 screens to 3 screens and then ultimately 5. So it became a multiplex in this very small town. Mom and pop, owned and operated, not part of any chain or anything like that. They just announced today, after 99 years, they can't do it anymore. And they didn't just point out COVID. They said, let's be honest, that hurt. They got to open up for a month before the restrictions went back into place in Jersey, and they still couldn't cover their bills at that point because wisely people are like, I don't know if I want to go sit in a confined space right now with other strangers and whatnot. So just like AMC and the big movie theater chains, the big multiplex chains, have been saying like we're running out of money and we might file for bankruptcy. The mom and pop shop that I grew up going to just called it quits as well. And, they pointed to not just COVID, but also, like we're competing with streaming.
Mm-hmm.
We're also like, the studio percentages are now favoring the studios incredibly. The window of distribution is smaller. So theaters were already kind of getting left behind unless you've got tentpole to release. Theaters were already hurting before the pandemic, and now they're hurting incredibly. So I think even though there's a vaccine coming, and I bet you a lot of people aren't going to be like, and now we could go right back to normal.
Yeah.
We can't. And some places have been so profoundly affected that they won't come back. We will see some movie theater chains fold. It's inevitable at this point. If the mom and pop shops are closing, next up are the big ones as well. So that's going to change the landscape in a big bad way. I remember, a couple of years ago, Spielberg and Lucas, I guess it was.
I remember that conversation.
Going like, it's going to move away from movie theaters. Movie theaters will just be about giant event movies.
And then Spielberg got an Apple TV show.
Yeah. And I remember thinking like, those dudes, of course, they're vanguards, but like, they don't know what they're talking about. Movies are never going anywhere. And they did not predict this.
No.
But they may be right, for the wrong reasons, but they may actually wind up being accurate. Movie theaters may become specialized like record stores or, not.
Yeah,
like
I think they'll boutique more. I really do.
Yeah. More like Broadway plays.
Yeah.
So the ticket price will go up to something like really ridiculous, $20 to $30, but you'll go out, first night for that Marvel movie and stuff. Think about when they finally release a Marvel movie in theaters and there's a vaccine. That's the one I think you get, like they kind of went out with Tenet and they're like, people love Chris Nolan. Like we do, but like number one, when he's doing Batman, and number two, when we're not fighting a pandemic.
Number three, what is this movie about?
Backwards. But I think like if you were coming out with Black Widow, that's like a math-worthy or risk-worthy movie, like a bunch of people would come out for and stuff. And I think that's the future of cinema at this point. I think, we're seeing most of the interesting human drama stuff or what used to be the mid-level box office movie or some mid-level budget movie have become series on Netflix, HBO Max, Hulu and stuff. So that's where people are getting satisfied by quality storytelling, prolonged storytelling. What the movies I feel like are going to be reserved for is just giant fucking spectacle. So when your big blockbuster comes out, bam. But, it's tough for me, a guy like me who makes smaller movies, to find a home at movie theaters in the future, unless you're talking about mom and pops who can weather through this really bad storm. And there are theaters that are doing it by showing like old movies, by just, they're single screens and kind of art house theaters. They're used to having to live by their wits anyway.
Yeah.
So like, but having your doors shut, I don't care how clever you are. If you literally can't vend tickets, how are you supposed to pay?
Well, we've come to enjoy during this going to the drive-in because right outside Los Angeles, it's about an hour away. There's this place called Mission Tiki Drive-In. That's where we saw Tenet. And
my first drive-in movie, because I'm from Canada, so that drive-in's not a big thing up north.
And what part of Canada are you from?
I'm from Ontario.
What part of Ontario?
Stratford, Ontario. But my dad was in the army, so like we moved a lot. But...
A bunch. A Canadian Army brat?
Yes, sir.
Who married an American Army?
Oh my God! Oh, you had a type, obviously. Yeah, the drive-in has been a great pivot. We've done some live shows at drive-ins. Quarantine began and stuff, like live podcasts and Q&As. I think those are great. If anybody hasn't gone and sampled that yet, what a nice like piece of Americana, revisiting this piece of Americana, which they existed. Like, it's not like they've gone away. There are like 500 drive-ins around the country. But generally speaking, they don't get those first-run movies like they've been getting right now. But now I think, aside from the drive-in, the thing that like blows my mind, which I'm advocating everyone try, if they've got the extra scratch, and a lot of people may not have the extra scratch right now, AMC running a deal where you can rent an entire movie theater for $95.
Yeah.
That's how desperate they are. And that allows you to bring up to like 10 or 20 of your guests or whatever, if they're in your circle or something like that. But like, as a guy who used to rent movie theaters and stuff for events, that price is insanely cheap, man. So like, you know, if you're in the mood for like a movie date, there's a safe way to do it where you can like literally have the place to yourself, man. And it's like the cost of what you would pay if you went to the movies normally and, you know, bought a bunch of stuff and maybe went out to dinner. So you skip the dinner, you got your own damn movie theater, and you can watch first run or other flicks. You could bring a flick for them to show because it's all digital at this point.
Yeah.
But I
bring your home movies.
Like crazy. That's like, what a great date. If you wanted to impress somebody, it's like, I got a whole movie theater for us to watch like Harry fucking Potter. Oh, you make out like a bucket.
Speaking of streaming, should we talk about spoilers?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So when you had your show Spoilers, Jason and I were on an episode of it.
Which one?
The Walter Mitty episode.
Right on.
And it's very funny because you and Jason talked for a really long time, and they cut your conversation.
Wait, we ended up talking about. We had a whole like 20-minute conversation about the director of photography and how we were like, yeah, well, the movie was okay, but like, did you see the shot in Iceland? And, and we started comparing it to old films, and yeah, there is not a clip of me in the entire episode.
But
the editors are probably like, too smart.
Yep.
I was the only one who said I didn't like it, and so my whole clip is in
She's the star of the episode.
You're the negative one.
I said it was like what you would write when you were 14 in high school, and you said that's the meanest thing I've ever heard.
Was that, and that was the season when we had big cups and candy things, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Season 2,
It was the one it was season 2, yeah.
But that was really funny. I was like, we have to tell Kevin this.
That is so amazing. Number one, like, oh my God, we've worked together before. But number two, like I remember in theory, I was like, oh my God, this show's going to be easy. And then like, I was like, I can't shit on anybody's movie. Like I was so rarely negative on that show. I always found something positive to say. And the toughest version of that was like, I love Damon Lindelof and I love his Watchmen. I think he's absolutely.
Oh, did Prometheus come up during that?
Oh,
I knew exactly what you were talking about.
We watched the movie, but Damon was like the guest who I interviewed.
Oh, and he's lovely.
Yeah.
He's so
fantastic,
lovely.
and he's from Jersey. Like everything about it is great. But Prometheus was a tough movie.
Yep.
So we talked about everything but Prometheus.
We have a great question here in the chat that takes us about to some Clerks 3 territory. Steven Schleicher says, oh man, does Dante meet Alanis, when he's having a heart attack? I think he means Randall, but if you don't have that in your script, that's a great dogma callback.
Let me tell you something. What a great reference. And it wasn't, but it will be now.
Yeah.
If we'll do it specifically as Alanis, but he has to reference God being a woman.
Yes.
Somebody else, Stephen also said that you should do the voice of God.
Oh my God. I'll be the voice of God, but not God. Maybe lowercase g, the circle.
Great type designer, Kevin Smith.
Jeremy Skinner says, which of your comic work are you the most proud of?
Let me see. There's the View Askew stuff. Like I loved, the Clerks comic, the Jay and Silent Bob miniseries and stuff. But that was kind of like in my wheelhouse already because I already like do those characters. But that leaves Daredevil, Green Arrow, Batman, and Hit Girl as 4 like series that I've worked on for other people using their IP. Of those, let me see. Well, I think the best told of the stories is Quiver. I think Guardian Devil is the best looking, but that was me still trying to figure out how to write a comic book and stuff. But it's a wonderful story. But I think like that, since that was my first mainstream comics work, I look at it and see like, oh, I dropped the ball. Oh, I did too much there. Oh, I overwrote there. By the time I got to Quiver, I was a well-polished machine. So I think that's the stronger story. But I think Daredevil, I'll always think it'll always have the edge in terms of fondness because that broke me in the comic book community in a big bad way. Like I had made references to comic book stuff and in Mallrats and Chasing Amy and stuff. But having Daredevil, like writing Daredevil with Joe drawing and Jimmy inking, gave me incredible credibility in the world of comic books beyond just being like, oh, he's that movie guy that likes comic books. Which now there's a bunch of us.
I was going to say, but you blazed the trail for that.
You did open the door.
Now so many people break into comics because they're movie people or they're novel people or they're TV people.
Yeah, it was weird, but I don't even take credit for that. Like I did it to be sure, but I only did it because, you know, you can only be it if you see it, right? Jeff Loeb, who you all know Jeff Loeb. Jeff Loeb wrote the screenplay to Commando. And he wrote the screenplay to Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. So I knew him as a screamer. I didn't know him personally, but when his name I recognized from the billing block of posters. Then one day he wrote Challenges of the Unknown with Tim Sale drawing. It was the first thing they did together.
Great miniseries.
Fantastic. And often overlooked because they've done volumes of great stuff together, including Long Halloween, but this was their initial DC offering, and it's steeped in DC mythology. So when they did that, like I was very taken by. They didn't promote it heavily, but they're like Jeff Loeb, you know, parentheses Commando, Teen Wolf, writes a story drawn by Tim Sale. So that to me was like, that's a guy from the movies writing comic books. Like that's. Nobody ever does that. That's amazing. And I remember thinking, like, if I was famous, I would try to write comic books. Like, what a good idea. Another person that did it was Sam Hamm. Sam Hamm, Warren Scarn wrote the Batman screenplay for Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. But Warren Scarn, no, not Warren. Sam Hamm wrote Blind Justice, which was a Batman or a detective annual. That the guy who wrote the screenplay for Batman wrote a Batman comic. And I remember my mind was blown by that. I was like, oh my God. So that was like figure 89, 90. And then Challengers was probably a year or two after that. So then when I come along, I make Clerks in 94. And then we do Mallrats in 95. One of the first things I do is start lobbying for comic books and comic book work and stuff like that. Like I remember going into DC when I was there working on Superman, working on the screenplay. They let me go visit DC Comics, and they were touring me around. They're going, "This is where this is." We passed Darren Vincenzo's office. He was then the editor of Green Arrow, and I poked my head in his door. I said, "Hey man, you don't know me. I made Clerks and stuff, but if you ever want to put Green Arrow into the top 100, you let me write it." And he looked at me like, who is this asshole?
I was waiting for you to go. He's like, silent Bob.
I wasn't even well known at that point. After we did Daredevil, and Daredevil was a book that wasn't in the top 100 at all. And when we relaunched it, it went to #1. I got a call from Darren Vincenzo. Are you the guy that wanted to do Green Arrow? And I said, yeah. And then later on, Bob Schreck, who I'd worked with at Oni, he started Oni Press with Joe Nosemack. Who did like Barry Ween and stuff like that. And they did the Clerks comic book. They did the Oni double feature, had the very first Jane Silent Bob story in it. Bob Schreck, I'd known him briefly he worked at Dark Horse. Around the time that Chasing Amy was coming out, we'd shot the movie, but it hadn't come out yet. It was going to go to Sundance. We, since it was steeped in comic book culture, we reached out to Dark Horse to see if they wanted to do like spin-off comics, Bluntman and Chronic comics that are in the movie. And Bob Schreck was like, I love that idea. Oh my God, I love those movies. I love Clerks and shit. I'm going to bring it into Mike Richardson, man. I think this is a done deal. And then Mike Richardson was like, that's the guy who did Mallrats. That movie's stupid. We're not doing that. So there was no comic book, tie-in or whatever. And Bob, was bummed because he felt bad because he promised us something that didn't happen. But then when he left Dark Horse, he went and started Oni with Joe Nosemack, and he called me up and he was like, I remember you wanted to do tie-in comics. How would you like to do them now? We're starting this company and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, absolutely. So then I started doing the that stuff for Oni. And that's when Joe Quesada was like, wait, you're doing comic books? He's going, well, I know you like doing Daredevil. You love Frank Miller's Daredevil run. Why don't you come write Daredevil for us? Because we got a few titles that Marvel's given us. Because Joe and Jimmy weren't Marvel guys. They had their own company, Event Comics.
Yeah, that's when they did Ash.
Really, they were DC guys. Like, Joe recreated Azrael, Batman Azrael, the costume, the character. He's done like a bunch of DC work long before he ever got to Marvel. So Marvel gave him stewardship, Event Comics stewardship of Daredevil, the Punisher,
Black Panther,
Humans, and Black Panther as
Mm-hmm.
well. And so they were like, Joe and Jimmy were like, why don't you write Daredevil? And at first I was like, oh my God, absolutely. I would love to do that. And then I kept delaying, and I kept getting calls and emails from them going like, we got to get started if we're going to make this like date and stuff. And finally I called them up one night and I was like, you know what, guys, I'm not going to do it. I know I said I would do it, but like, I got to back off. I'm not a good writer like Frank Miller. I have no business touching this character. So thank you. But like, I don't think I could do it. And Joe's like, come on, man. Like, I think you could do it. And I was like, nah, I write goofy shit. You guys, you'll find somebody better and stuff. And he was like, all right, well, I guess I got to understand. He hangs up. 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from Jimmy because Joe was the good cop.
Mm-hmm.
He comes at me so hard. He's going, you're a piece of shit, man. And he's like, you said you were going to do this. You said yes. And you led us on for months. We offered you this really great gig and you were happy to do it. And then you call up Joe and you tell him you can't do it because you're scared that you're not Frank Miller. Nobody's fucking Frank Miller. We can't write comic books anymore. And I was like, well, I mean, what am I supposed to do? He's going, do the fucking thing you said you'd do. I was like, all right, I will. Fucking guilted me into doing it again.
And if anyone knows Jimmy Palmiotti from the interviews, and we've met him,
accurate,
that is 100% accurate, Jimmy Palmiotti.
But Jimmy is also, again, the loveliest person, like the nicest guy, will help you out.
And also now a writer, like one of the writers in comics. But when I knew Jimmy, he was the inker. He was Joe's inker and stuff. So I've loved watching his career where it's like, holy shit, man.
I mean, him and Amanda are like the king of...
They're cute.
They basically rebooted Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's nice when you saw when they were making the movie, they got to go to set and stuff like that. And I'm sure they got their names in the credits, but they deserve as big a fucking round of applause as Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. Paul Dini and Bruce Timm create the character, but Amanda and Jimmy, or Jimmy and Amanda, recreate the character and make her what she has been in Suicide Squad, what she's been in Birds of Prey, and what she'll be in Suicide Squad coming up with James Gunn, which looks amazing.
And even the awesome animated show. It's so good.
So good, but I get angry when I talk about it because I should have pitched that show. I don't know. I love this shit so much. I'm too reverent toward my love of comic books that it never occurred to me to walk in and be like, it's Batman, but everyone says fuck. You know what I mean?
It does feel very Kevin Smith.
When I watched the first episode, I was like, son of a bitch. Like, cursing, but comics and cursing is right in my fucking wheelhouse. As a tried and true DC fan, I'm not saying they shouldn't have done this. I'm glad they did. But it never would have occurred to me to be like, oh, I know, I'll make them curse. Because I'm like, they don't fucking curse. They're paragons of virtue and shit. But there's nothing that's delighted me more than fucking Batman's first appearance in that show and listening to fucking Alan Tudyk's Joker go, this fucking guy. Like, oh my God, it was pitch perfect.
I think you just found the new title of your next autobiography, Comics and Cursing. I think just take it, roll with it.
I don't want you to sell yourself short either because Onomatopoeia is getting a lot of love in the comments. So
good. I love that character. I do feel very like, you know, I might have mismanaged the whole thing, but I love that Onomatopoeia exists. Of course, I wrote the character. Phil Hester and Andy Parks rendered the character for the first time. And I remember like when Bob was at DC, Bob Schreck, because he was the guy who, you know, we did comics with at Oni, but then he went to DC. And that's why I did Batman there and said Green Arrow with him because he was my editor. He got us Matt Wagner to do the covers because him and Matt are like this going way back in the day. So Bob had asked me to come over to DC and do Green Arrow. I was like, oh my God, in a heartbeat and stuff. And so now I lost the thread of my story. I got stoned again. I
don't know. I was hoping you were leaning towards like I got a bunch of those original covers somewhere in that house.
I have all the original Matt Wagner covers for Green Arrow. They're hanging at the secret staff. You could see them hanging there. But wait, there was something important, and it was, oh shit. It was this guy, and then I was bragging about writing Green Arrow, and then Fuck, I forget. But it was a totally good story. Now I lost the thread of it. My bad.
That's okay.
Well, we can fill in with this comment, and we have one more final. Zach
Oh,
Jason, just
Onomatopoeia.
go for it. Onomatopoeia, go for it.
So Onomatopoeia, what I did was, since Bob was at DC after I left, like when we were done working on Green Arrow and stuff, I said, Bob, don't let nobody uses Onomatopoeia again until I use Onomatopoeia. And he was like, all right. And so for years, periodically, I would get a call from some editor on some book going like, or an email going, hey, can we use Onomatopoeia? This author wants to use, and I'd be like, no, I've got a story that I'm doing with that character, so I don't want anybody else to touch it. And there's only, I think, been 2 instances of use. Somebody wanted to use them in Checkmate as like the head of Checkmate, and I was like, no.
Interesting.
But there was one use of him in the comics in DC, and then weirdly over on, I guess it would be Cartoon Network, they did a Green Arrow short, like a little Green Arrow short.
Oh yeah, when they did the DC shorts.
In a very like cartoony style.
Yeah, they were called like DC Nation, I think.
Yes, it was DC Nation shorts. And it was very animated style, more like DC superhero girls than like the DC movies. But they fought Onomatopoeia bots. And when he like
I remember that. Yeah.
He took one out with an arrow, and then Onomatopoeia dropped out and tried to run away. And my heart exploded, where I was like, that's a character, like, you know, I was very like protective. I was like, only I can write this character. But it was also a character that I didn't think would ever translate beyond the comic book page, because onomatopoeia is a comic book term, and or it features heavily in comic books. So like I remember when they did the Arrow show, I was like, you can't do that character, man. It'd be weird to have a guy go bang and then fire a gun, because saying the word bang and the actual sound of a gun bang do not sound remotely similar. Yeah. So I was always like, well, he'll never go past this medium. But then when they had him in that cartoon, I was like, I can die now. Like it was, they didn't ask me, it was unplanned, but I was like, I was
That's so funny, because he's always on the short list for people like, put this character in the Arrowverse, put this character on.
I can't speak to the Arrowverse, but like for comics, if you ever wanted to see that character again, the only reason he hasn't popped up is because of me. And if I was smart, I would have let him fucking do it all the time.
He could be in the Suicide Squad.
Harley Quinn, and no, he's mine. He's mine.
he's your son. We've exclusively revealed.
No, Kevin, I want to ask you as the final question closing out here. You know, we have a lot of people watching that are, you know, want to make movies, want to make podcasts, want to do all the stuff, comics. What do you do to keep yourself motivated to work on the next script, the next podcast, the next comic book? What's your process? Like, what gets you to keep on typing?
For me, it's twofold, and it's very simple. One is I can't imagine doing anything better than making pretend for a living. It was my favorite thing in childhood to make pretend. And mostly we leave childish things behind when we enter adulthood. But I found that one walk of life where they're like, go make pretend, even though you're 50 years old and stuff. So there's still an absolute joy for it, for creating a world. Like, I'll never be God. I can't create life. Like, I watched my wife give birth. I'll never do that and stuff. I had a hand, obviously, but like, like creating, birthing something that goes on, lives after you and stuff is a very unique process only women are very intimately familiar with, unless you're a writer. That's the only other way that you can feel like you've played God in this world, because you can literally create scenarios, universes, people. Like, it's fun. So that has never lost joy for me. And it's fun when you get paid for it. It's even more fun when somebody like, here's some money to do that thing that you would do for free. But the joy of doing the thing, it's in and of itself, it's never gone away. I like making pretend. Number 2, terrified of being irrelevant. Once you've been introduced to the world, they're like, this is a guy who does shit. The trick, nobody tells you this shit. You got to do it until the day you die, because otherwise you will feel this aching emptiness for like, wait, what happened? People used to care about what I thought. I've been spoiled my whole life. I went from like growing up with parents who, like, I was the little child, the third child, so I was the baby. So everything I said was cute and important. And then a few years after high school where nobody gave a fuck about me and shit. But then I made Clerks. Let me see. I was 17 when I graduated high school. I was 20 3 when I made Clerks. So 6 years I had to be like a normal person where people are like, fuck you, I don't care about your shit. Then when I made a movie, all of a sudden I became special again. Like just like I was in childhood, where people are like, he's a good boy. So I've
Kevin.
very rarefied, like special existence. My friends make fun of me. Josh calls me Special Kev because of my job. To have that go away, I've seen and felt moments where I've been less relevant, to the pop culture in general. It creates a cold, like the world goes cold so fucking quick.
So you're never going to be Sean Connery and just buy an island and be like, I
go
don't
to
want to talk to
Wimbledon.
you anymore.
Go to Wimbledon once a year. That's your thing.
I'll never understand those people. You got to be famous in a whole different level than I've ever been well known, because to be able to walk away from that and be like, I just want to sit around and do normal shit now. Like I guess I'm in the Kevin Smith business. So every morning I wake up, I got to keep the Kevin Smith business going. So relevancy is a big component of that, and it's like, I don't need worldwide relevance. That's why, like the last 4 years on Twitter, I never said remotely anything political, because I'm not like looking for like, hey man, I'm part of that conversation. The only conversations I need to be a part of are the conversations that I know exactly what I'm talking about and I'm insanely passionate about. Comic books, movies, TV shows, shit like that, all the fun in life. So I in order to stay busy or stay working, I got to stay relevant. I mean, I could write for myself and that'd be wonderful. And I did that when I was a kid. But now that I've written and I've lived this life where everything I write has the potential to be seen by people and judged and appreciated and maybe loved, like some of the other stuff I've done, that would be very hard to let go of. So 2 things keep me motivated. One, just the joy of creation. Like, oh, I can't believe I get to make shit up. It's still magical. And 2, I'm always looking behind me to see when this shit's over. Like, to see when they're like, there's the door. We will no longer be needing your services. And believe me, most of Hollywood has shown me the door many times already. Thank God for the Kevin Smith business.
But you still have the secret skeleton key, because your movie's on Amazon. You're
making Motu.
You're making Motu.
I get lucky from time to time. I believe me, I love those jobs when they come along, particularly when the ones like Motu, I started literally as me going, all right, this is a job, and I get my head around it, and has become a passion, like transcended job to become like, oh my God, like I hope they talk about this when I'm dead and they mention that I was involved, because I'm so
We already decided that. The Oscars of 2050, Battle Cat, Kevin Smith. Well, Kevin, thank you so much.
Man, now I'm going to go tell my wife, I was like, these kids just told me when I'm going to die, and it's
20. Right. 2050.
You didn't even give him till First Contact Day.
That's right. Well, I don't know how much of a Star Trek nerd Kevin is. I know he's a Doctor Who nerd.
I want to be there. I thought James Cromwell was an asshole, but he did come up with the tech that fucking called attention to us by the Vulcan. So what's the date on that?
April 3rd, 2063.
Yeah. Bozeman, Montana. We'll see you there.
I'm a huge Star Trek nerd, so that's why. Yeah. I'm planning a trip to Bozeman, Montana. We're going to go.
Star Trek movies. Oddly enough, I was never drawn to the Star Trek TV show, but I love the movies and treat them like religion and stuff. I would love to be around for that 2063 day, because you know how like every year people are like, hey, it's Rex Manning Day. For fucking for that, for Empire Records. Yeah. Imagine the global clusterfuck we're going to have of when that real date comes around. We're like, that's the fucking date of First Contact.
Yeah.
We are living in First Contact.
It's also because Bozeman, Montana is in the middle of nowhere, and I don't think that town knows the people that are going to descend.
All dressed as
like the new Area 52 as everybody shows up there.
Oh, my God. Well, everybody out there, thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us. This has been a pleasure and an honor. We are at $6,350, so we pushed past the goal, which is amazing. We did the math on 5,000, and that was going to be able to send 333 packages. So we're well past that now, which is amazing. That's a whole platoon.
Yeah. Truly, that is the Lord's work, and I don't mean that in any. I mean, I was raised in a faith.
Yeah.
But I don't mean that in the Catholic way of you're doing the Lord's work. You're doing the Lord's work. I mean that in the way of like Lord Stanley, who created the Stanley Cup. Like, there's nothing better to hand a bunch of people who are like in some of the most dire and frightening situations a human being will ever be in their life, and give them a little piece of home, give them a little comfort, give them a little escape, first and foremost, man. Like, the idea of giving real heroes, some superheroes to read, I salute that and support that.
Well, thank you, sir. And I'm gonna put out a soft idea. I'm hoping you're gonna yes and this. We'll see. You might slap it down, but let's find out. Can we get a soft commit to next year's Jawiin Charity Drive for Service?
Get 100% hard commit.
All right, Kevin. I would love if you're our new closer until 2063, the day we're gonna die in Montana.
Done. You got me. Oh my God, it's such a great cause and easy chit chat and stuff like that. So you have me, and hopefully we get to do it in the real world, not online.
That's the fingers crossed. The new idea of where we'd love to take this. Kevin, such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for helping us out, and thank you for giving us any amount of your Saturday.
Oh my God, thanks for having me on. And kids, if you can, spare a few bucks, spare some time, spare a bit of yourselves for people who are sparing themselves for us, so that you don't have to go over there. That's something I've always profoundly appreciated about military, not just in my family, but especially like in the real world, because I've met over the course of my career so many people in the service who are like, I love your movies. We used to sit around and watch them all the time. And I'd be like, why? There's nothing about the military in those movies. And they'd be like, that's why, bro. That's why.
I will tell you, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was a movie that was frequently watched when I was in Iraq. And I think simply for the fact that it was just, I mean,
was it a legal copy?
It was a legal copy. Yes, it was illegal. But there's lots of like illegal, like we called them, and I know this is an offensive term. We called them Haji movies because it would be somebody with a camera in a theater in Paris.
Oh, like doing a bootleg.
Yeah.
And you would always tell when like the theater person would walk in and the person would be, oh God. And you see like black, but it was all we could get. Like, that's how I watched Batman Begins in 2005 for the first time, was on one of those movies. But Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was one of those movies just because it was so easy to just sit back and watch you guys goof around and all the pie fucker jokes and stuff like that and just laugh.
It is. It's the kind of movie that's like, even if you don't like Jay and Silent Bob, like, stick around. Like, Jason Biggs will show up. Stick around.
Yes.
My heart goes out to anybody that has to leave their home in the line of helping others to do their duty and stuff. And I thank them profusely, because I never, ever in this life would have had enough courage to do that myself. So thank you for your service, as they say.
Well, thank you for your service for this drive, and we'll see you next year, because we got to begin the countdown to Bozeman. Thank you so much, Kevin. Have a wonderful Saturday.
I'll be there for you next year, kids.
All right. Take care. Take care, sir.